Welcome to CivilNet. We are in Stepanakert, the capital of Artsakh, and we are joined by Artak Beglaryan, the Chief of Staff of the Republic of Artsakh. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Beglaryan.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. So you were recently appointed Chief of Staff of the Republic of Artsakh.
Of the President.
Of the President, okay. What does this position imply?
First of all, we should understand what means President of the Republic of Artsakh. The country is presidential country, and President is the head of both the country, but also the government. It means that if we compare with the Republic of Armenia, President combines the functions of both Prime Minister and President of Armenia here in Artsakh. And it means that I am Chief of Staff of the President, which means that my first duty is to ensure proper activity of the President based on the Constitution and laws, and which means that I am coordinating and governing I'm managing not only the staff of President, but also somewhat I'm coordinating some works of the government, of the executive power.
But before that, previously you were the Human Rights Ombudsman of the Republic, and there were flagrant violations of human rights during the war. And one of the most urgent cases that we have now is the prisoners of war in Azerbaijan. They're still kept, some of them are still kept captive in Azerbaijan. And I was wondering, what is actually the Republic of Artsakh doing to free them, and why is it taking so long?
We should understand that it's a hard issue because of the Azerbaijani deconstructive or criminal behavior. And secondly, the efforts are made together with the Armenian government. I mean, we are not alone. In some cases, the Republic of Armenia is dealing with that issue, is negotiating, if there is anything to negotiate, with the Azerbaijani side, but also talking with the international partners, etc. But for sure, there are some specific functions, jobs in this context that we are doing here. But this topic, I mean, the prisoners of war and civilian internees, which are kept under Azerbaijani captivity, is mostly the topic of the Armenian government. We are supporting mostly with information, with some data, etc. But we are, in parallel with that, we are dealing with the issue of missings and finding the dead bodies of fallen soldiers and civilians, because field works are done mostly by our rescuers together with some officers, army officers, but also some parents or relatives of missings.
That was my next question, actually. So there are now hundreds of Armenian soldiers' bodies that haven't been identified yet, and families are still waiting for their sons and brothers. And I wanted to understand what was the reason why the identification takes so long. Is it, what kind of difficulties do you encounter?
It's another topic that the Armenian government is dealing with mostly, because the DNA testing system is working in Yerevan under the Armenian Health Ministry. That's why I'm not authorized, and also I don't have enough information to assess what's going on, what happened, etc. But as the human rights ombudsman of Artsakh, since October, I was dealing with, and my staff was dealing with collecting data on missing persons. And since then, that issue was visible, that there are some issues and could be some issues with DNA testing. Besides DNA testing system and its peculiarities and difficulties, objective or subjective, there were some problems also with data collecting processes during the war and after the war. If we could keep the procedures properly, in that case some processes would be easier and faster. But because of the war, because of the lack of experience and lack of institutional mechanisms, we lost some important data which could help us to improve the processes. But I guess the key issue is firstly the late processes of handover of bodies, and also searching activities because of the Azerbaijani deconstructive behavior and their blocks, and mostly. And the second issue is this DNA system, testing system, that I can't say exactly what was possible and what was not possible.
In terms of humanitarian issues, the president of...
I'm sorry, just something to add on war prisoners. It's quite visible, and it's pity that the Azerbaijani side by now hides many identities of Armenian war prisoners and civilian internees. Even if there are video proofs that those persons, both war prisoners and civilians, were under Azerbaijani captivity. But they don't accept, the Azerbaijani side doesn't accept the fact that many of them are under their captivity, which is a serious crime and violation of international humanitarian law.
Talking about humanitarian issues, Vladimir Putin, who is the president of Russia, he called on various international organizations, humanitarian organizations, to get more involved in Karabakh, in Artsakh, in terms of humanitarian issues. What do you think about this, and are there some reactions from those international organizations already?
This call was quite important one for us because the leader of one of the great powers and also one of the co-chairs of Minsk Group had such kind of call in parallel with active, intensive humanitarian aid by Russia, direct humanitarian aid by Russia to the Artsakh people and government. But it's somewhat surprise, but also a pity for us that the international community didn't work properly by now, during the war and after the war also. During the war because of the lack of international responsiveness and international practical support, we had such kind of large and deep humanitarian catastrophe in Artsakh. And we had these consequences because of their inactivity. But even after that, after the war, only Russia is seriously present here among countries, but also among organizations. There are Russian organizations working here, and only ICRC is seriously working here. There are some small organizations or mid-level organizations which are working, but not with large projects. For example, MSF, Doctors Without Borders, and some other organizations are working here, but they have small projects. The most important thing was in the call of Putin, then Lavrov, that UN bodies and institutions should enter Artsakh. And even there is a point that UN organizations should work in Artsakh mostly on humanitarian issues and refugee issues, etc. But by now this issue is not decided, is not finalized because of the Azerbaijani pressure, Azerbaijani behavior. But I would say that the main guilty side is the UN, because UN agrees on the Azerbaijani blackmail, Azerbaijani pressure, even in the context that there are many people, tens of thousands of people under serious humanitarian needs. For already 4 months after the war, but they didn't come here. The same is about UNESCO, that just in the beginning, UNESCO should enter here to assess the situation, to ensure the protection of Armenian cultural heritage under Azerbaijani occupation. There was a statement, condemning statement by UNESCO, but it didn't work. After that, there were many vandalism cases. Even in many villages, including, for example, Metztager, the Azerbaijani army totally destroyed the Armenian cemetery. There are many other cases that Human Rights Ombudsman in December published a report on vandalism. But again, UNESCO is silent, UNESCO is not coming here. The same is about refugees, the same is about UNDP, UNHCR, etc. And for me, as an official, but also as a person and former human rights ombudsman, it's quite impossible and unacceptable that UN and other organizations, including Council of Europe institutions, including Commissioner for Human Rights, they don't come. They even stated, including Council of Europe Commissioner of Human Rights, that they are coming Artsakh. Officially they stated, but they are not here for 4 months.
When you say that Azerbaijan blackmails the UN or put pressure, how does the country do that exactly? What do you mean exactly?
I can't say exactly what it means, but I would say for sure that there are mostly technical, even 100% technical and quite political arguments by Azerbaijan and blocs. Which means that UN, Council of Europe, and other organizations, including humanitarian and human rights organizations, should not accept such kind of blocks and blackmails. It means that human rights and humanitarian issues are politicized by Azerbaijan, which is acceptable by UN, by Council of Europe, etc. And they always speak about human rights, universality of human rights, I don't know, their duties, etc. But when it comes to speak about, to act, to protect human rights or to provide humanitarian aid to people, they don't act.
Let's talk about social issues. You said that some 105,000 to 110,000 people currently reside in Artsakh, and among them many residents come from region now under Azerbaijani control. What kind of project is established to help them to settle in Stepanakert, and what regions, like for example, are there people from Hadrut, or where do they come from originally in majority, those internally displaced people?
We have over 40,000 internally displaced persons, which is over 27% of the whole population of Artsakh. Many of them are in the Republic of Armenia because they don't have places, they don't have housing conditions in Artsakh to return. The minority of them are in Artsakh, over 10,000 or something like that. But we don't have now enough housing conditions to invite the others who are living in the Republic of Armenia. We hope to have in the upcoming months just urgent reaction. We have already some projects, we have already some results, but it's not enough. In the upcoming months, if we have enough conditions, we hope to bring hundreds, if not thousands, of new families back to Artsakh, and hopefully in the upcoming 2-3 years we will be able to provide enough housing conditions for all displaced persons. We are not alone, and we can't do this alone. We are doing and have done such kind of projects, both housing and also social projects, together with the Armenian government, together with Hayastan All-Armenian Fund and Russian support, and some Armenian charity organizations.
In terms of economy, the economy of Artsakh is depending on Armenia, around 70%, and Artsakh also lost some hydro energy resources because of the war. How do you deal with the situation economically?
We have a hard situation economically. We are now assessing the losses, but the economic losses are a few billions of USD, which is a few times more than the Artsakh GDP, annual GDP. We lost many things, including factories, mines, mining factories, including hydropowers, the majority of them, and many, many other things, and agricultural fields, 75–80% of the entire fields, thousands of hectares, gardens, etc. And now we are planning new projects in order to improve the economy, including agriculture, mostly intensive agriculture with gardening and some other projects. But also we have some other projects for Stepanakert and for industry in Stepanakert. But we are now dependent much more on the Armenian economy and Armenian aid in order to have our budget expenses and to solve our everyday issues. From perspective of infrastructure, in these 4 months we have done a lot, and all the communities now have electricity, have gas supply, and we are improving the water supply issues. But it's not enough because the power is not enough for us. We are bringing from Armenia. And we need to improve the infrastructure of, for example, the electricity. Because of the many losses from Karabakh side, Shahumyan region side. Now, and also some factories are stopped because of these issues, since the infrastructure are not powerful enough for us. We are working, and hopefully in a few months the economy will be restored somewhat. But for many years I'm sure that we will not have the level of pre-war period, because, for example, during the pre-war period we were already 100% independent from electricity supply, for example. We had over 50% of our annual budget, if not more, from our own incomes without Armenian government loan, which was also formed by our incomes, by our economic activities.
Thank you, Mr. Beglaryan, for this talk.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and continue to follow CivilNet.